I'd like to call the April 24th, 2024 Board of Selectmen's meeting to order at 6 p.m. Mr. Pinio, do you have any need for non-public?
Madam Chairperson, we do not.
The board does. We have minutes. I've been trying to get us to approve these minutes. We're either going to do them tonight or I'm going to keep you on May 1 because we need to get them done. So when we get to that time, we can decide whether we're going to go in to do those minutes or not. Okay. Old business. We have received 3 estimates on putting up a fence in Kate Park, and I think we have, Jim, do you want to explain to the board what you've done and how you got the quotes and which ones you feel is a good quote?
Okay, Jim Aponis, Parks and Rec Foreman. It's been a little bit of work trying to get these estimates. I've reached out to quite a few fence companies. Right now, like you said, we have really 4 quotes. A couple of them did not come out to site. They just went off of the dimensions and type of fence that we have. But just overall, looking and as far as a time frame, I mean, I think we're all looking forward trying to get it done as quick as possible in like a May time frame. So a few of the companies are definitely out into June. So the 2 companies that I've found that could possibly, or have pretty much told me they could get it done in May was Reliable Fence and McCurk. So I guess my recommendation, I mean, you've got all the information in front of you, right, on the prices and the type of fence?
Yes, they do.
Right.
Yep.
Yes, they do.
So
Yes, I do.
my recommendation is Reliable did come in late today with their quote, which I had been waiting for it, but that seems to be the best at $3,838. In their time frame, they said it was 1 to 3 weeks, which is great.
Have we used Reliable before?
We have not.
Okay. Now, they've been around a long time, though.
Yeah, they're a big company.
Yeah.
Hey, Brian, why don't you let him finish, and then I'll ask for Board of Selectmen's comments.
So, I mean, they did get back to me, which was good, and their time frame is good, their price is good. I just didn't like that it took that long to get the quote back. It took a few extra calls to get them, but they did come through, so. And then I think if the other option would be the local, he's right here in Wolfeboro, is McCurk. And he's again, May time frame. His price is a little high, so I think we try to go with Reliable first and keep them as a backup. But I'll have to make contact with Reliable tomorrow if that's the direction we want to go.
Does any board member have any questions they'd like to ask Jim? Brad?
Not necessarily for Jim, but for Jim down here at the end beside Dave. Jim, you'd sent out an email, I don't know, at least a couple of weeks ago to the owners of the buildings down there asking for their input or their kind of their thoughts of moving forward. Did they ever respond back to you on that?
So they advised me that they were on vacation through the 18th. I have not heard anything back from them.
Well, I think that leads us to how exactly we want to pay for this, whether we want to pay for it and then try to collect it, whether we want to attach it to a lease. Anybody have any questions, comments?
I think that,
Paul? Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead, Brian.
I was just going to say, I think that's kind of why I asked Jim if they'd come back with us, which they haven't. So I think that gives us the opportunity to do, choose the method we want to proceed with here to get it done. And well, like you said, we just need to figure out the mechanism to get it paid for, by the property owners.
Yes, and I think the longer we wait, I mean, it could backfire on us again, and we could be looking at the same thing all summer long. So I think we have to try to move fairly quickly on this because we're just going to lose, maybe they're going to get real busy and we'll lose that window or opportunity.
Paul?
Yeah, so Thanks for your looking into this, Jim. So from what I've learned, talking to the town manager and Linda, is there's been a genuine effort to find a way to screen these gas bottles. I think I remarked a couple of weeks ago that I think we've gone above and beyond the call of duty by going out and finding a fence. But be that as it may, we did. I think you're recommending a lower price option. I think we all agree that, and even, I guess, the people downtown across the street agree that we want to make that place pretty, not ugly. And I would recommend that we go ahead with this project and then attach it to the lease as an incremental, either one-time payment, or they can stream it over a couple of years, whether maybe a finance charge, maybe just a one-time payment. But I just put it on the lease and go forward. The issue is we want to get the fence up. That's the issue. The question of how we get paid for that, it's very important because taxpayer money is going to be fronting this thing, but I just think we just move forward.
Right?
So I think we should book the fence, have it scheduled. We still have 3 weeks, 2 to 3 weeks before they even start the project. That gives Jim time to go and try and get in touch with Peter Ford and them again to find out if, how much they're willing to pay, when they're going to pay, how they're going to pay. That we have 3 weeks to work that out. The only thing I see about the quote, and I would ask Jim if he's concerned about it, Jim Aponis, the only difference between, and I don't think it's a big deal, between Reliable Fence and McGuirk Fence is McGuirk was using cedar posts and Reliable is using pressure treated. Do you see an issue?
Not at all, because actually, we're going to make that decision. There's no difference in price.
So you could change them and have them do cedar posts if...
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
We're just going to figure out which is the best,
Okay. It would only be an appearance thing.
Yeah. Right. Well, I guess that's a question, is what you all would want. Would you want cedar posts, which might look a little better, or the pressure treated, which will last longer? So,
Paul?
I agree with Brian's comment about the next couple of weeks, but I'd start with a registered letter that goes across the street that says this is what we've done. I just think it's important we just document this as quickly as we can.
I'm just wondering if there's that's what I was trying to look at, if there's a deposit that's going to need to be made to sort of set up a time with these people.
Well, I think we can still make a deposit. I think they're going to stall it in 1 to 3. In that period of time, we can send a letter, and I agree with Paul that we send a registered letter so it documents that
Very nice.
Contact
Yeah,
them,
very nice.
and that they know that that's how we're going forward. Because we had met with them, we had talked with them, we thought they were alongside of us. And then we've reached out again through an email, and we have gotten nothing back. So I think, and Paul, I'm okay with a nice letter. I just think it needs to be certified.
Yeah, very nice.
Dave, you have any comments?
I think we want to get it done as soon as we can, that's all.
That's right.
Anybody else have any comments or questions? If not, would somebody want to make a motion?
I'd like to make a motion to use Reliable Fence with Jim Aponis deciding whether or not to use pressure-treated or cedar 5x5 posts, price to be $3,838, to book it as soon as possible and to have a certified letter sent to Peter Ford with the results of our meeting.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? All righty, thank you. That's
Thank
nice
you.
to get that
Jim.
one done and finished.
Thank you, Mr. Bonus. Very good.
Okay, we are now going to leave the regular meeting, and we're going to go into a work session. A is organizational chart, and I think that's you, Jim.
Okay, so we have had a conversation about our organization as a community and some of the positions which we currently have that we're unable to fill, and some of the tasks that were challenged to have completed. The intent tonight is to try and do, for better terms, a 30,000-foot flyby of the organization, and from that point be able to have the board, myself, look at some job descriptions, some tasks, and potentially be able to come back with some recommendations about a path forward. One of the items that I would sit here and state is a lot of this does fall clearly within my authority as town manager. However, I think it's a really bad model for me to just move forward as the town manager and unilaterally make these decisions. That's why I wanted to involve the Board of Selectmen for support and hopefully get some positive feedback from the community as we try to move forward. So I'll try to give you a little bit of history of how we got to where we're at today. And in 2020, the voters in town approved one new position in the Department of Public Works.
I think this, Brian says that Bobby Budman said go-to meeting is off. My understanding, this is just going to be.
This was not advertised as a go-to-meeting
No.
session. It was
It's just
advertised as a
YouTube.
work session and broadcast via YouTube.
And that's what I thought, but I just wanted to.
Okay, so I'll restart. In 2022, or excuse me, in 2020, the voters approved one new employee in the Department of Public Works as a laborer. You may be asking why is that relevant? Well, when we get into the org charts a little bit, I think it'll paint a picture of our staffing levels. In 2021, the Director of Operations position became vacant. The decision was made between myself and the Director of Public Works, the town engineer, not to fill that position at that time. In 2022, we did have an Assistant Director of Public Works. That Assistant Director retired. Concurrent to that, the new director, or the current Director of Public Works, was hired, Steve Randall. His original task when he was hired was to oversee highway, garage, solid waste, buildings and grounds, and that occurred in September of 2022. As well, in September of 2022, our town engineer retired. So we brought ourselves back up to a par level, and then we dropped that down one. At that point, we tried to advertise a town engineer position. We tried to advertise moving forward as a special projects manager position. In 2023, we advertised as an assistant town manager position, assistant town manager / special projects manager's position. We weren't able to fill any of those. We really received no qualified candidates to be able to interview. Michelle Chamberlain, the HR coordinator, is here, and she can attest to that as well. And most recently, we've lost our superintendent of the water sewer, with that position now being vacant. So what has that created for us for problems as we move forward? We have a problem with critical positions which are vacant. We've identified workplace shortages which are going on nationally, and there are large spans of control. I'm not too terribly worried about that from my perspective, but within some other departments and the excessive workload which is taking place, I think there is some concern. And then again, the other item is, myself, the finance director, the Director of Public Works, those three positions specifically, we don't have anybody that we're grooming as our replacements as we move forward. If I take a vacation, I have to task a staff member with the role of acting town manager. When Steve Randall takes time off, he delegates it down to his independent foreman, which works, but it does become challenging, especially when we get into the busy season of CIP budget, which you all well know that's really an 8-month process from start to finish. And our finance director, I do believe the finance position is the most important position we have in this town. That's an office really of 2.5 employees. One of those shares the duties with HR coordinator. And we know that Casey does intend on retiring in the near future. So that's just something to keep in the back of our mind. So I think some of our solutions moving forward is to review the spans of control, review tasks not being completed by job description and needs of the community, so that we can try to create a path forward. So with that said, when you look at the 2019 organizational chart for the Department of Public Works specifically, at the time they had a total of 18 full-time employees. As noted, in 2020, the warrant added 1 additional staff, bringing it to a total of 29 full-time employees. Yet we no longer have an assistant director, and we no longer have a operations manager in those positions. This is the organizational chart as the Department of Public Works operated in 2019. Overall, as a town, this is the organizational chart with the Board of Selectmen, myself, the executive assistant, and then when you go across the various functions of town, I do believe finance is operating very efficiently. However, we've identified the fact that we may have some retirements in the near future. The other thing with finance is technology does fall under the auspices of finance, and due to some plans to reorganize, we did hire a full-time HR or full-time technology person in 2021, I believe it was. That position is now vacant. We're relying heavily on our contracted service, but I think this is an area that we've got to look at from a high level to be able to take on some of these duties that we'll be talking about. Human resources, that's Michelle's position. She is also the finance officer, so there's a dual role there. Tax collector, that's a pretty seamless operation. That department has a staffing of the tax collector, a deputy tax collector, and 2 employees. Pretty seamless operation, nothing to be too concerned about there. The planning department, we're currently having an assessment done of the administrative duties which are being performed in there. We also have code enforcement under that, and I'd sit here with a great deal of confidence and say our code enforcement is tasked heavily, and one of those tasks under the code enforcement officer, he is now a deputy health officer to help our health officers out as complaints do come in, and he's been working with the health inspector on some inspections and how to deal with some of those complaints as they come in. We have contracted assessing. Again, that's a contracted service. We do have 1 staff member that fills in the duties. I do anticipate we will need to fund money next year for a full reevaluation. If you recall, that was in the operating budget for 2024, which got voted down, and there'll have to be a conversation whether or not that's a standalone warrant article, whether that's in the operating budget. If worse comes to worse, there's a possibility that DRA could require us to do it and take it from our unassigned fund balance. We don't want to go down that position. Pop Whalen and Abenaki, as a result of town meeting in 2023, that was broken out into a standalone position. I think that there is some administrative help that I need to provide there. Parks and Rec, they currently have the administrative division, which is Christine and Bo in Parks and Rec, and then they have maintenance, beaches, programs, and cemeteries. I have not been able to provide the time to Parks and Rec to help them out moving forward with some strategic planning of the department. And that's an area where I just haven't been able to put any focus. Fire department and emergency management. Emergency management tends to take care of itself without a whole lot of issue. Fire as well seems to take care of itself. However, we do have the pending conversation taking place about ambulance services and what will take place there in the future. Municipal electric department. The municipal electric department seems to operate pretty seamlessly. Not a lot of effort is required on from my office in that department. Department of Public Works, this is kind of a layout of the organization as we see it today. And the next slide will go into that a little bit deeper. As you can see, there's a lot of functions which are taking place there with essentially an administrator of one, which makes it challenging. Welfare, that actually is a part-time duty that falls under the executive assistant of the town manager. It is a function which is getting busier all the time. We're observing greater expenses within our budgets, so there is concern about that department as the town continues to develop. Libby, that's pretty straightforward. There is a lot of effort that needs to be put forward to the Libby, but that is determinations is what we're going to be doing with capital projects. And right now, there's simply not a lot of capacity to put much effort into that function. I would also note that the police department, communications and animal control, they fall directly under the police commission, and that's who that department reports to, and the police commission reports to the community. Wolfeboro Public Library, similar function. They operate as their own entity under the trustees. The one caveat to that is we do have an MOU with them regarding the building and the property and what our responsibilities are and what the trustees and the librarian's responsibilities are. And the town clerk reports to the voters. The employees, if there are concerns going forward, the employees don't report to me necessarily, they report to you as the Board of Selectmen. So that's a quick summary of all of the functions of the town and how we try to move forward. Now, this does not capture capital projects, which I think is a huge component of our community. And I would just state at this point, you know, one of the items within the Tater and Howard report, which I'll quote right now, page 3, leadership and management. This is a evaluation which was performed in 2020 on the Department of Public Works. For the town to be efficient and effective in leading and managing the workloads of both the director and the assistant director of Public Works must be alleviated. This can be accomplished by different means, and they went through 2 different scenarios for an organizational chart. The takeaway on it is, in 2020, we identified that the workload could not be sustained going forward within the Department of Public Works with 2 administrators, and today we're sitting there with 1 administrator within the department. So to back up a little bit, the 2020 organizational chart, as it was laid out within the Department of Public Works, it was the Board of Selectmen, town manager, the director of Public Works, the administrative assistant, and then it laid out the various 7 functions of the department. Today's organizational chart looks very similar. However, we've broken it out to the number of full-time employees within each division and what is currently open. So in 2024, our staffing levels for full-time employees is 27 compared to 29 in 2020. We've had a reduction in middle management, which is the assistant director and the director of operations. The director of DPW currently oversees 7 functional areas. Those areas are streets and highways, the DPW garage, solid waste, buildings and grounds, water treatment, water distribution, and sewer collections, and the wastewater treatment plant contracted operations. I do think that our current director does have the capacity to handle this for a period of time, but it's not sustainable going forward. Additionally, this does not include the capital projects, not only the planning of capital projects, but the execution and the paperwork that goes along with those capital projects. So he uses his foreman very well, and they do an excellent job, and they've got a good working relationship as they move through. However, it does appear that the span of control is maxed out for that department. And as alluded to, some of those capital projects, we know we've got the sewer pump stations, which we're gracious to have Brad help us out with right now. We've got water main replacements. We've got sewer main replacements that are coming up. We've got stormwater replacements that are coming up. And then not too far down the road, we know that we've got a bunch of smaller sewer pump stations, which are going to need some capital work. And the big one in the room is the wastewater treatment facility. At some point in the not too distant future, we're going to have to tackle that one. And I don't believe that this should be something that should be tackled by our current director. This should be a standalone project. With that said, a lot of these projects do require grant funding, and those grant funds as well come with a lot of paperwork. That paperwork is very labor intensive and takes a lot of time and effort to ensure that we are adhering to the standards of the BARBA, Building America Back Better stipulations within contracts and whatnot. Most of those grants, that's tied in with it. So there's a lot of effort that's put in there. So current open positions, we have a full-time engineer in the general fund, which is current as of December. March 31st, we have a balance of $66,000. In the sewer fund to the town engineer, we've got a balance of $24,000. In the water fund, we have a balance of $18,000. And we also have the superintendent of water and sewer, who is budgeted in the water fund of $72,000, meaning as of March 31, 2024, we have a balance of $180,000 for that. Additionally, we've got an IT coordinator position, which is vacant. We've got a current balance of $37,000 there. So we've got a balance of $218,000 to be looking at funding. As noted earlier, an assistant director of public works position is not currently budgeted. So areas requiring staffing, special projects, grant funding, grant writing, grant management. ARPA takes a lot of paperwork, a lot of time. We've been fortunate with a couple of our grants. We've actually thrust this onto the engineers, but we've had to pay for it. But it has paid dividends for us because they know how to deal with that paperwork and they handle it. State revolving loan fund, we've got some of that paperwork that will be coming up in the next couple of years for some of these projects, and we don't have anybody in-house with any institutional knowledge on how those programs work. Same thing with loan forgiveness, so those are things that we're learning on the fly. Technology, we've done an okay job with technology. but I think we've got to get better at it, and I think we need to function at a higher level. Our IT company does a great job for us, and that ties in with right-to-know requests. One of the items that ties in with right-to-know requests is a lot of those are heavily driven by technology. So right now, when we receive 91A requests, we rely heavily on our IT company to be able to put that request together. We go through it as staff to ensure that there's nothing there that's privileged. And from that point, the IT company goes ahead and disseminates it to whoever the requesting party is. And then, of course, we have succession planning, which is a town-wide issue. We kind of touched on it regarding Casey. You know, I hope not to go anywhere in the near future, but, you know, if this board so changes its mind, if the community feels I'm not the right fit and we get a lot of pressure, then that's something that obviously can be discussed as we continue to move forward. As well, you know, I think a couple of the departments have done a great job at grooming an assistant or a deputy, but there are some of them that simply don't have it. I see you waving, Brian. Can I just get through this? Path forward is to review recent job postings, job descriptions, and compare them to our needs. Modify job descriptions to capture what we want to fill. And honestly, I would like to try to advertise for some multiple roles to see what we may be able to attract for a candidate to fill some of these vacancies that are weighing heavily on our existing staff, and some of that may involve as well hybrid type of modifications to job descriptions. And then from that point, I'd like to be able to schedule Nick's workshop. So I guess with that said, that's kind of my 30,000-foot view of where we're at and what's going on. And before we dive too deep into this, I'd like to hear what you as the board has for input.
Well, I did have one question that's semi-related but unrelated. Right-to-know requests, do we pass the expense when it occurs onto the person that asks, or are we picking up that expense?
We will pass it along if they ask for paper copies.
Okay. Does it cost us with our IT contract when we ask them to do a right-to-know request?
Of course.
Good question.
I think the answer to that is, of course, it's hourly work. Although you can check.
Well, how would we like to do it? You want us, I was going to go down and then work ourselves around, and so let's do it that way, and you'll be next. Brian, do you have any other
Linda, could you
questions?
just use the mic? I know.
Brian, would you like to start it, and then I'll go to Paul and Brad, and I'll end up.
So it's a lot to digest, and looking at it and reading the Tate and Howard report, this is a good report. If we could have followed it to the letter, we would be in really good shape now, but things kind of went off the tracks for the whole country in 2021. So this report almost instantly became not doable.
I would add one point to that Tate and Howard report that I probably should have put into this presentation that I did not, and that is my fault. We did try to implement this, and we did create a warrant article in 2021, I believe, for additional staff, and that got shot down overwhelmingly in the warrant article by the town.
Yeah. And so, like I said, this is a great roadmap, and if we could have done it, it would have been fantastic. But you look at this now, and you're like, well, that's not possible. This isn't possible. This isn't possible. This isn't possible.
Oh,
So
I disagree.
it looks like we need 3 staff members. We're down 2, and we could use 3. If you count IT, we're down 3. We've advertised and advertised and advertised. I don't know if there's a way that we can reach out and look for a hidden job market, meaning and I've said this before, I'm not against hiring younger people that may not have the 100%, their resume may not fit exactly what we need. But is it somebody that is going to feel like, given an opportunity with us, they're going to then buy into the town of Wolfeboro and into, our culture and our town and grow with us? And I mean, that's the way it was years and years ago. You look back at the 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s in this country, and I mean, the people from the military came out of World War II with zero experience, except people were like, what they did was important. Come work for us, we'll educate you, and that's how this country was built in the 50s and 60s.
I would respond to that with saying you're absolutely right. However, I think there's a couple of wild cards in there that we're really unsure of. One of those is, today's generation of workforce is not loyal to the employer, which is fine. I understand that. They're loyal to themselves. And if they have a better opportunity to find a greener pasture, they're going to go for that. The unknown is, what are those people going to be doing in 10 years when the next generation of workers comes forward? We don't know that yet.
Paul?
Oh, wait a minute, I'm typing something. All right. Thank you. Jim, I think you did a great job. I had a question, just a tactical question, when you were describing the public works function. Span was 7. You said that's not sustainable. And then you went on and said, in addition, we have capital projects. So is the 7 not sustainable because of capital projects, or does capital projects just make the problem worse?
So I think it really boils down to, it's a big workload with the buildings and grounds function, which we are heavily dedicated to today, with a new arena, a new public safety building, a new rebuild of a town hall,
Okay.
a public safety building, a library, and we've got a wastewater treatment plant coming down the pike. We've got a desire for a senior center coming down the pike, and we have to maintain those. And right now, we look at the railroad station, we look at dockside, we look at all of those assets, and that falls under that buildings and grounds. And I think that Steve has done a good job at assigning that out to Bruce Marinell, and I think Bruce has done an outstanding job at maintaining the asset. But I don't know if, with the volume of assets, that it's sustainable. And absolutely, Paul, with the capital projects, he can't manage those as well on top of that.
So I appreciate that. So you've added that to it. So I want to respond to my colleague's comment. If you walk into, this is going to sound a little academic, but if you walk into the headquarters of Apple, there's this little thing on the wall that says, "Welcome, I hope you're coming to work for us. If you do, it's going to be great. But when you leave, we'll wish you the best." And I just did a little Google here. Our parents left World War II, and the deal, it's called the deal was, get a job, you won't necessarily get rich, you'll get a pension, and it'll be wonderful. And then my generation was, get a job, move around 3 or 4 times in your career, and now the Zs and the Xs are moving around 4 and 5 times. It happens. We have to just anticipate that as we grow. I'm gonna say I think what you laid out is important. I ask myself always in my life, do I know what my job is, and am I doing it? And my observation for the time that I've been away is I think we've had a little role confusion, and this can help sort that out. It's pretty clear to me that, that corner office, wherever that down there, is getting bombarded, and I'm interested in knowing at some point, where's the work coming from? Are we tasking you? Because I'll promise you I won't task you unless you want me to. But what I'd like to think about as we go through this is, what are the critical functions we need to get done? Where do we need to put them? And then how do we need to resource them? Without having and I won't do this, other people can do this, I won't have the conversation that says, I think we need an assistant director of ABC, and I won't put a person's name on it, because to me, that will bias the conversation. What functions do we need to get done? Where do we put them? And then how do we resource them? I was the person who failed miserably at trying to convince the public that we had a concentration of risk issue inside of Public Works. I was the spokesperson at the deliberative session, so see how good that was. I mean, we currently have, and if you go back and look at what we currently have in the Public Works function now, we're right back to where we were. We're running 70% of OpEx underneath one person's pencil. And we're running probably 80% of capital under one person's pencil. By the way, forgiveness grants and all that other crazy shit stuff that we have to do. That's not scalable. So
Well,
I want to fix that.
I think you hit it right on the head, the concentration of risk.
Well, it's a concentration of risk. It's, if that person makes a mistake, it's a big boo-boo. And, we could flog people and say, and we've got a couple of those in the recent past. Who cares? We did it to ourselves, potentially. So I'm not going to go to the public and say we need to have anything, because I'll get shut down. But I think we need to deal with that one probably sooner than later. And I don't know how we do it, but I'd like to put functions in boxes and then figure out who we ask to support those functions. Okay, thank you for that. I think you did a great job.
Brad?
Yes, thank you. Jim, I want to thank you, too, for bringing out the Tate and Howard report. I remember seeing it back, 4 years ago, and I think we all kind of put it up on the shelf, and, you got the dust off it, brought it back out to us again. So when I went through this, it really brought up a lot of good information in here. There's some things in here that we've done. As I was going through the list of things here, some things that are ongoing that we're doing, some good suggestions. I think this is the type of report I think would be worth, in my mind anyway, of updating. It's 4 years old now. Obviously things is, Paul and Brian have said things have changed in the past 4 years, obviously, in the workforce and everything that's going on. I identified a few things like, that they even identified in here, and I'm wondering if a wage study would be appropriate to take a good look at. The water system portion, we've done, it's been in here recommended, for Josh Thomas to continue training, move up chief operator. He has. He's doing a great job up there. I think buildings and grounds, has just been mentioned here too and stuff, and I think that could almost be developed into I won't call it a small department, but it could be almost like a standalone type department with a foreman on it, so that it would take some of that, the daily operation that our public works director has on it now, and it would just be a foreman reporting to him of what's being done there. Because Steve does a great job relying on his foreman. He has them, he tasks them with the jobs and stuff, and they go out and they run the crews, so he's not so much tied up into the day-to-day. He knows what's going on, obviously, but he's not tasked with making sure everybody's doing every little thing out there. And I think the buildings and ground could develop into something like that, because we do have a lot of assets in this town to maintain, looking forward stuff, and also to maintaining and update and even finish up some of our asset management plans that we have going on. So I think it's great. I think it's a good tool to move forward with. I think it's always going to take some more meetings here to fine-tune some of these job descriptions. I kind of see one of the major ones for getting the main help for you. We kind of really have to morph some kind of a description there. As you said, we've tried 2 or 3 different avenues there and haven't had any luck with it yet. So we got to find the right one that'll pull in a good candidate or two that we could, consider bringing on board and stuff, and and help with the efficiency of the town. So I think that's it for right now, anyway.
Dave?
Well, I think I agree with Brad that this report had some great information and outlines in it and should be opened up again. So I think that's one thing. The other thing is that we've found, I think, with some of the advertising that we've done for some of these positions, we don't have enough money. We don't have enough money to draw some of these people to us. And I think that's true of today's workers. They're interested more in the money aspect than they are in even some of the benefits. We offer some great benefits. I mean, I know when I was out working for another town, the benefits were tremendous. You know, they were about the same as here. That doesn't mean a lot to most, I want to say, technical people or your higher people up on that chain. They want money. And we're not supporting the money through the Budget Committee. We've asked for it in the past, but the Budget Committee says no. And that's what some of the downfall is that. And I think if we had more money, I think we could gain the respect of some of these people and get them in here to work for us. But that's a big issue, money. Always has been. I mean, most of us, at least myself over the years that I've worked, you know, every time I've moved up, I moved up for maybe 20 cents or 25 cents. Now it's thousands they want. And that's nothing wrong with that. But we don't have the money to support it. We have had enough time supporting some of the things that everybody wants here, and we can't supply everything. But I think this report is a great tool for us to move forward with. The other thing, this report in itself, there's a lot of good information in here with job descriptions. The one thing I got out of this that I felt is very important, and that's the evaluations of employees. As far as getting evaluations done, I know the supervisors are getting done, but some of the other help may not be in that position where they could say, well, my evaluation says this, I should be getting this much more. And somebody else shouldn't be getting anything, but everybody's getting the same. And that's what some of your morale starts to have a problem, I think, having run different types of programs. But again, a lot of this is going to depend on funding. That's what I see.
I would just say that the evaluations are being done by the department heads and their foremen. That's being taken care of. The other thing that I would say is regarding the morale, specifically in Public Works, I think I can say this, where our current director has heavily delegated out to his foreman and allowing the foreman to truly run their departments. I think that has had an improvement in morale over the past couple of years. There's always going to be morale challenges. That happens day in and day out. But I think we've made some strides there. And I think what you said related to the wages, you know, obviously to bring somebody in as a finance director, for example, who is seasoned, yeah, we need to pay a premium for that. But to go back to Brian's point, if we bring somebody in fresh out of college, we can get them trained up over a couple of years, we may be able to alleviate that initial impact of the hiring, but the risk comes with how long are they going to stay with the town of Wolfeboro. So great points, though. Thank you, Dave.
Well, I want to thank you for finally getting to this. This is something we've needed to do. There was a gap that we could see when in 2020 we weren't covering what we needed to in terms of our jobs and our tasks, and we're not today. And that's what brings us to this. And this makes sense for us, the Board of Selectmen, to sit down with you. And I do want to point out it's Section 37:6, powers and duties in particular, and it's talking the town manager. And number 1 is to organize, continue, and discontinue from time to time such departments as the selectmen may from time to time determine. So it really is a partnership here that we're getting into right now, and I don't feel we're stepping over into your authority. I think what we'll do is saying, we know that we don't have the right number of staff. We need to come together. We're doing it in public because we want the public to know that we realize that we've got an issue here. When I look at it, Dave Ford, and because he was here in 2022, was having trouble covering all the executive, and I'll use your word, function. I would have used task, but I think function is good. And we still have that through. And when I look at some of the projects and capital projects and all, that's that function that needs desperately to be covered. And I think it's shown in this report, and I found that very interesting. I really appreciate you laying out all the charts. The public will see what we have. I'm looking forward to taking those job descriptions and looking at where those functions are and where we need to put functions to maybe get another job description. And I think we as a board and a town may need to go out and hunt for somebody. Dave Ford came here because members of the board happened to know him from the past. At that time, we paid him top dollar. And I'll tell you, the Budget Committee never forgave us about it because, you know, he had been a Public Works Director and assistant here. He had run our sewer treatment plant. He was working for a water company. He and one person had all those expertise in the executive function that we were looking for. And it wasn't, he couldn't do it after a certain period of time. It burned him out. So I think we're on the right path. I think we need to move forward with this and see if we can set a time to pull out the job descriptions and really sit down with them. And I don't know whether we want to do it as a whole board, whether we want to take certain job descriptions and divide up into 2 and take a look at it, or exactly do some of that and then come back together. It may save us some time, so.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that I would really hate to do, you know, and one of the reasons from my perspective, we're doing this is I would hate to put together a document and have that document have glaring duplications of services. There's a difference between redundancy and duplication, and I'm good with redundancy, but duplication, I've got some heartburn with, and I don't want to be going down that road.
It's expensive when you do that. Look, Madam Chairman?
Yep.
I like the idea of busting this up a little bit, you know, getting a couple of select people's eyes on different functions. I'll volunteer on Public Works. If anybody else, I'll do it. I'll help. I just want to react to the future tense you put in things, because, you know, where we've been is interesting. It's prologue. Where we're going is what we got to get muscle around. And, you know, you laid out some things that are about to happen inside of our Public Works function, which is, you know, we're going to rip up the center, the middle of the road. We have to do sewer projects. We have a lot of things that have to be done. And immediately what comes to mind is, who's going to plan for that and who's going to do it? And the plan piece has engineering. Somebody's got to put a stamp on a plan. Somebody's got to articulate we can buy that stuff, but who makes sure that all of those things get kind of sequenced together so that we don't have an oh, you know what moment we go, we forgot about moving the poles. Oh, you know, so how do we do those kinds of things on the plan side so that when the do function gets going, they just do? And that's not meant to bucket anybody, but you gotta kind of separate that. And I'm seeing some less than strength in the plan side. And and I'm not saying I see less than strength on the do side. I think the plan side, we probably should buff up a little bit.
I would agree.
And I'd like to play in that space, if I can, if you guys want me to. I'd like to work with anybody to play in that space.
I'll work with you on that, because
I think that's
where I am.
important. Right? Because if you don't get the plan right, you can do, and it's just do. It's just not working, right? So anyway,
I see that as that executive function, that pulling it all together. And you have your engineers doing it here, and this department needs to move the electric line. It's the person who's the executive who's looking kind of over everything and planning it out. And I see that more in an executive
I'll
function.
go a little with you on that. What I resist is because that begs the question about, when you start using the E word and the D word and all those important words, you start thinking about organizations. And I want to strip that out at the moment and say, what needs to get done? Where do we put it? How do we fund it? Who does it work for?
And we may have just different buckets that we're putting it in, and we can deal with the terminology, but I think that's what
we're going to unduplicate stuff. If we could pick one or two of those things and just kind of click them away, that gets us on a trajectory, and people, I think, all of us, even our team in town, will say, God, they're actually paying attention to what we're doing. Just my advice. Thank you.
Anybody else have any other comments?
No, I like the idea of maybe breaking up into a couple of people, and I still think that this report is a great outline
It's a nugget.
for us to work with today.
So one question I would have, and I heard this a couple times, and I can reach out to Tata and Howard and ask them what it would take to refresh that report if this board is so inclined to let me do it.
Yeah, for sure.
That's what he said.
Yeah, they may look at it and they may be shocked.
Yeah, I think they will be. I think they will be, and I think they know a little bit. But so I'll get that rolling to get that report refreshed, and I'll try to report out to you next Wednesday as to an estimated time frame for that to be delivered.
That would be good. That's a
One comment,
Brad?
Linda. We're going to have these smaller groups of stuff. Did you want to keep them at, under 3 there so we don't have
Yep.
come in? Okay, because I was going to, in the public works part was kind of my strength, but I'd defer to if you guys are going to do it, that's good. If you wanted some input on something separately on that, I'd be happy to do it on that avenue, something like that, so we're not meeting together or something like that. But
Well, I think one of the interesting parts of that, Brad, is you could be interviewed by these two based on the work that you're performing and what you see, the need based on the sewer extensions and the sewer pump station work and the relationship with the engineers that we've experienced.
that'd be good.
We would, let me see what the mechanism for that is. We may have to notice a meeting, but let me see what that mechanism is.
Do we want to set a target date to come back together? Do we want to break up into the small, and into small groups? Does anybody want to take another section?
So one of the sections that I'd like to see people take, and you didn't necessarily receive it, but would be town manager, finance, and HR.
That looks like it's Dave and I. Town meeting, town manager, finance, and HR. Are we concerned about the planning department, or I'm very happy?
Not yet.
I'm very
In my
happy
opinion.
with
don't
the
have a
route that we're
report.
going with the assessment and everything like that. Do we just let that sit for a while?
I think we let that assessment
Then let
play
that
out.
sit
Yeah.
till we have that report that we've, have an MRI do.
And maybe with Dave his understanding of how money is an issue with getting employees here, maybe he and I can look at that in relation to town manager, the finance and IT and human, I throw IT in there, and human resources.
Support function, major support function.
So what I'll do is I'll put a package of the job description the job descriptions together for you based on Paul and Linda and the DPW function. And I'll do the same with Dave and Brian related to the administrative function. And we'll see what we can do from there. I would suggest that, if you wanted to schedule a time to meet, we could do that, but it might make sense to wait until next Wednesday to see if I can get an estimated time frame for Tata and Howard to refresh that report.
Okay.
Brad could do the Parks and Rec and Pop Whalen and Abenaki, and if he wants some help, I said I'd be willing to do that.
And I think he's got somebody who's interested in helping, is that what I saw?
Can I help?
Okay.
Madam Chairman?
Yep.
I wanted, I'm glad you did that, because I wanted nobody out there to say, oh my God, here we go. They're going to leave us out of this conversation. I think everybody's fair game in this one, because I think we need to, across the enterprise of this town, look at functional analysis and then figure out what we want to do. And I'm glad that we're going to have that view of Parks and Rec and Abenaki and all of that stuff. And Brad, if you need help, I'll help you. If you want to do it by your onesie, that's fine too. I'm interested in the Pop Whalen because it's an enterprise fund, and we've got to get that thing over the finish line, and we've got to help that person be successful.
My only hope is that this doesn't become an exercise in chatter and it actually becomes an exercise in getting something done.
I agree.
I would agree with you.
I hear lots of chatter all the time and things don't happen.
I agree with that.
Well, that's why I thought about going. That's why I thought going into small groups that we could get things started and spend some time and it gets people committed into the project. It was what I was hoping that would do, Brian. So do we want to wait until next Wednesday in here, or do some of us want to just get the job descriptions and start kind of playing around and looking? I think we should get going. I hate waiting, and I think it makes better. You get us the job descriptions and we can start, looking, we have what's here, and then maybe when we've done some work on it, we get a report back, it'll give us something different to look at it.
Oh, yeah,
And
I wasn't saying hold off to the start. I would say start immediately. My thought on holding off was just to schedule our next workshop until we get an idea what the time frame may be from Tata and Howard to refresh this. But I would, if they're going to say, you know what, we can turn this around in 2 weeks, okay, well, we would schedule a meeting or a workshop in 3. If they say it's going to be 2 months, I still think we should hold the workshop once a month on this topic until we get it across the finish line.
So I'm okay if we're going to do it as frequently as once a month. I was not sure on how long we were going to go, or if the.
Oh, yeah, I would not go beyond 30 days.
Yeah, maybe we set a rule that if it's over once a month, we all yell at ourselves for dragging our feet.
No, I wouldn't go beyond 30 days.
So we do it sooner, or at least once a month, whichever comes first.
Okay.
Can I have a clarifying question? Did I hear? I heard Brad, and I see this box, this functional box that says buildings in the Public Works function. Is that to suggest that we're? Because I remember from my olden days that everybody had their own little game, right? Somebody managed this building and somebody managed. Is it your vision to kind of put that all under a?
So
leader?
I would sit here and say that when I was fire chief, I do remember conversations that were taking place about trying to have a standalone person dedicated to managing all of the buildings in town.
Mm-hmm.
Didn't work. We weren't able to get there.
I remember that one.
I think that some of our buildings with some of our staff are easily managed and can be managed by those department heads. The challenge becomes the dock spaces. This building that has no department head that's essentially assigned to oversee it holistically. We are now, I think we're in the midst of finishing it up, but Dockside Restaurant's getting painted. Who oversees that facility? There are a lot of those assets that just sit out there and
Rust.
rot.
Rot.
I like rot
Rust.
better.
Until it's brought to somebody's attention, nothing happens to it.
I said rust because I saw the rust on the little thing coming in, the thing you wipe your feet on.
I think he.
Our solid waste facility. That happened to our solid waste facility for years. It's just slowly, but we did a great job. It's back.
So I'm not clear that I got an answer. I think I heard you say there's no one size fits all, and I kind of agree with that. If we did this global, I'm in charge, it sounds like Alexander Haig. We don't want to do those things. But am I hearing you suggest that you'd like some input that says maybe we ought to grab a handful of these assets and say, we want a function in place, wherever it works, whoever it reports to is irrelevant at the time, but we want a function in place to make sure the doors get painted, that the window, you always had this thing about the windows, that the bricks get pointed. Are you suggesting we ought to be looking at that
Yeah.
for you? Do you want to say yes?
So I think that's a conversation that you have with those departments. I do think that the fire department has the ability to manage the public safety building. I think the library has the ability to manage the library. I think Barry has the ability to manage the MED building, which we lease to him. I think the Parks and Rec department, they should be tasked with providing world-class programs to the citizens of the community. And I really don't think that it is a good idea to have Christine managing a bunch of buildings and properties. She does it with her staff, but her focus should be on people.
Parks.
But how many,
Parks and people.
And this isn't meant, and I at least from the way I come at this isn't meant to be a takeaway, take
No.
from A and give to. This is meant to be, how do we make sure that the investments we've made in some of these buildings, which is quite sizable, that we get a couple more useful years out of the building. If the chief of the fire department says, I just got a brand new building, I don't need your help. Okay, it's fine. Library, I'm fine.
I take a look at it, and I think the dockside and the railroad station are some of those that just
Yeah.
kind of sit out there.
The community center.
We don't, community center could be another one. And I think we look at what those buildings that need somebody to oversee and those
Yeah.
buildings that have the staff in the building. And that would be the difference
Yeah.
I would look at.
And to your point, no department in a given place, but in addition to all your daily chores, figure out how the HVAC system is working on the building. That to me is like it's not
backwards.
functional.
It's backwards. We should not be canceling meetings with citizens who are coming in because, I've got to meet with the contractor to service the HVAC unit that just broke down. That's a non-starter.
So we'll need to look at that.
So he's suggesting that we should look into that.
I'd say,
Just
Paul,
trying to get the quotes.
yes, you got it. We should look into that, because I think it's been a problem we've had for years on how to.
And
to
I'm
look at that.
hopeful that, in a year and a half, when we have this asset management plan up and running, that the documentation of it will all be streamlined, and, when there's a problem, it's documented in the software, and the request for service goes to the appropriate person and streamlines it right through to
I
completion.
do have a question about that, too. Is that asset management plan available to each and all departments?
Eventually.
So right now, it's not.
It's not at this
So what's your theory about how each and all departments would buy in or get in on this? Do they have to pay something? Do they have to?
Well, all their buildings are on, and we've already factored that in.
So this is just a rollout question, not an adoption question?
Yeah.
Okay.
All the buildings are contained in it. Do we have Barry's inventory of?
Yeah. Okay, no, you don't.
No, we don't.
Okay.
So,
Yeah, I just want to avoid to my colleague's comment, I want to avoid I wasn't part of the planning, so I'm not in on this thing. Everybody's in on it.
Yep.
It's just a question of how the rollout comes to your department.
Yep.
Okay, I got it. Thank you.
Excuse me for not understanding. What is Jim Shannon's role? He has a role where he was involved in the solid waste facility.
that would be joint loss management, I believe.
Yeah.
That's a townwide committee that we're required to have, and that would have been as part of joint loss.
Yeah.
That has nothing to do specifically with municipal
With
electric.
any of the buildings
But-
or anything either.
Yeah,
But they give recommendations to us where they say
Correct.
that we have safety issues.
Safety
And
problems.
at that time, I believe he may have been the chair.
Yeah.
and is it only safety issues, or does disrepair of buildings fall underneath them? Could we use that group for the three
No.
buildings without department
No,
heads?
absolutely not. That does not fall within their purview.
Okay.
But I think, we should thrash on that at the right time as to whether that makes sense. That might logically make sense, but thrash at it just for a minute or two and then either disposition it one way or the other.
I guess my take on that is if there is a, let's say, broken window in a building, I'd really hate to have that report go to a joint loss management committee that meets once a month when
There you go.
make a telephone call and let's get the darn thing fixed.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm just I don't want to leave any, any donut unturned here. I want to look at the whole thing. Okay.
But again, a lot of that comes back to money. And where do we get our money?
There you go again.
We don't get it from us. You get it from the budget committee to the taxpayer.
Yeah.
Because the budget is theirs, not ours.
Well,
So, like I said earlier, it's all coming back to money.
Yeah, but if we can identify it all, and we've got everything divided up, and things are not being funded,
Yeah.
we know where our problem is, and we know
But I'm
that the
saying,
fund.
it's going to come back
I know
to that
that,
situation.
but we don't even know all the places where we may want to put the money at
And
this point. Which one comes first?
All you got to do is go, take the list of the buildings and walk around them that we own.
I'm talking about the whole project, not just the, sorry, I wasn't talking
Well, I
just
was
about.
following up on what,
he was pointing at me.
Well, I wish you guys
Pointing at
would
him.
quit pointing at each other.
We as a town raise a significant amount of money, and I do think that we raise enough money to appropriately maintain the buildings. It's the application.
The voters have always, I should say always, we're at like a 99% hit rate on we need capital reserve monies for things. They generally are okay with that. They start to get grumpy, when it becomes opaque. But now to Mr. Senecal. Since 2019, the Board of Selectmen has recommended $180,706,000 to the Budget Committee. The Budget Committee has recommended to the voters $179,708. We are within 0.6% over the past 6 years. 0.6%. Statistically speaking, that's an insignificant distance. So I think a good case, I hope, a good case will, because it's a compensation issue, a good case will be heard, I hope.
Yeah, and you're talking about buildings. I think we have an easier time getting the buildings than some of the money for staffing.
Yeah.
Is my feeling. That's
Linda, this was the-
intangible. You can see a building, you can sell it.
Yeah.
And we've been pretty successful on that.
This is the
We have not
operating
been
budget.
really successful on getting new positions put in. You wouldn't have them in there.
This is the operating budget. This is the sum of the operating budget. So last year's operating budget,
But they could have already cut it out.
34.3. No, this is what they cut out. So last year's operating budget, we proposed 34.4, they came back 34.3, a distance of $61,000.
Yeah, but I
on
think
a
that-
$34 million operating budget.
Okay, and that is that the Board of Selectmen took a lot of time to cut a lot of stuff out. I can think 10 years ago, we'd go through here and say, well, we'll leave that in, the Budget Committee's
Yeah.
going to cut that out. Oh, we're going to leave that in, that'll give them something to cut. We take it to a certain point. There was another philosophy this year and some of the last years when you got the high tax rate impacts. And we did a scrubbing of that budget before it ever went to them, where other years we did not.
And Jim scrubbed it pretty good, too, before we got it.
Correct, absolutely, yep.
I think we're saying the same thing. I think they're close to what we propose.
Okay, so I think we've got our tasks. I'll report out to you on Wednesday night, and then we'll go from there. The last item that we have, HR coordinator is here, Michelle. I think she has, if she could come up to the mic. First of all, I'd like to recognize her for spearheading this. She went through and worked with staff, and she updated the personnel policy. The personnel policy has been through legal. We've had multiple meetings with legal, and Michelle's here to basically say to you, here's a draft of our updated personnel policy for you to review, and we'd like to try to get this instituted sometime in the late May to early June timeframe.
Correct. Hi, Michelle Chamberlain, HR Administrator, Town of Wolfeboro. So we have worked on this policy with the staff. Actually, it's been quite a few years, which is kind of sad to say, but it's taken a long time. So I really would like to get it done as soon as possible after you guys can review it. That would be great. If you can send some comments back by email, that would be appreciated. Then I could forward it to the attorney. We have gone over this quite thoroughly with him, and he made a few suggestions. Basically, some of the things, if you look at the discipline policy compared to the prior discipline policy, he stated that it should be more vague than steps implemented. There was a couple of suggestions like that that he had made. So, and the harassment policy, we used combination of the prior one that was developed 2 years ago with Primex approval as well.
And tied it into one document.
Yes, and everything is now in one document, which is
So no references to other things, which is always gets you in trouble.
And once we get this adopted, we can put the other ones aside. So there's no confusion on which one's which.
Madam Chairman.
Okay.
Madam Chairman.
So
question, Bob?
you want us to make comments of any of the areas. So the main area you've upgraded the harassment and put it all in here.
Everything's in one policy now, Linda, so the harassment's in with the personnel, whereas before we had it as standalone because we had updated that in 2022.
So we have the 2022 update of the harassment
Yes.
policy. That's what I was trying to get.
Correct.
It's just
Yep,
stuck
but
in
it's
here.
in here, but it has been updated as well.
And so the main place you think there's major changes is in the discipline area.
Discipline function.
Yes.
All the rest of it is pretty much the same.
Well, not exactly the same. There has been, like, the cybersecurity has been implemented, social media, some things that we didn't have in the
Okay.
policies. The last update was in 2018, I believe, but there wasn't many changes to it. It was just approved. It's supposed to be approved every year, but there hasn't been a lot of changes.
Okay.
I saw significant changes. I thought, and I think it's a very, very nice policy. I have one question for you, and I will see you in your office about it whenever you have time for me.
Send me an email, Brian. Thank you.
Michelle, I agree with Brian. What I didn't catch, and maybe it's just because I read through it too quickly, there's an annual re-up with the associate. Each year, refresh at the point of appraisal, you re-sign. I understand the personnel policy.
We should be doing that, correct?
No, we should or we will?
We haven't
We
been.
will.
We should or we will?
We will be.
So we're gonna, and that's actually, that's pretty good. I mean, everybody's on a same baseline. Here, if a performance appraisal comes across the table, refresh your understanding of any questions you have about it. No, you may agree or disagree, but you acknowledge that you got it and you sign it. And you just go from there. Okay, that's fine. That's good. Thank you.
Okay, so we'll shoot for end of May, 1st of June to get this approved.
Correct.
I think that's.
Thank you.
Thanks, Michelle.
Next meeting.
Thank you, Michelle.
All righty, and we're going to hold off on the next work session, and we'll talk about that on this coming Wednesday.
Yep.
So that probably should be added to the agenda. All righty. Any public comments?
Public meeting.
Hearing none. Board, how do you feel about going into non-public